Hello students, I am Dinesh Udupi. In this video, we are going to study the introduction part of immunology topic. So this topic as prescribed for the 4th semester and 6th semester students of our college. And here we'll be restricting ourselves to the topics of the syllabus. So this is the overall syllabus which is prescribed, and we will cover these topics in many videos. So today we'll just concentrate on the introduction part of the natural and artificial immunity. So let us start with definitions. Now immunity is defined as ability of an organism to resist the disease causing organism. So the ability which is present in the body to protect against infection by an organism is called immunity, and this immunity is provided by the immune system. So we have different type of organ systems in our body, like digestive system, respiratory system, reproductive system, etc. And they are doing their specific functions. So respiratory system is associated with respiration. Digestive system is associated with the digestion of food. In the same way, the immune system, which also consists of some organs, is associated with the function of immunity. Now, what is infection? So, entry of a pathogen into the body through any medium. So, if a pathogen enters into your body through any mechanism or any medium, that condition is called infection. So the medium of infection may be through water. So the pathogens may enter into our body through the water we drink, through the food we consume, through the air we inhale, and through the vectors. Now here vectors are the animals like mosquitoes which transmit the pathogens from one person who is already infected to another person who is healthy. For example, the plasmodium, which causes malaria, is transmitted by the mosquito, and other viral disease like dengue, chikungunya, they are also transmitted by the mosquito. Then there are some viruses and disease which are transmitted through the body fluids like saliva and vaginal fluid, etc. Then what is pathogen? So any disease causing organism is called a pathogen. For example, the pathogens, these are some of the, not some of the, these are the pathogens which are known to cause the diseases to the humans. So the worms, here you can see the worms like tapeworm, roundworm, ringworm, pinworm, etc. Whenever they enter into our body, they are going to cause some problem. They are going to create some conditions which are called diseases. So they are the example of pathogens. The worms may enter maybe in the form of spores or maybe directly, etc. Then protozoan, there are some parasitic protozoans like uh, Plasmodium vivax, Trypanosoma, Leishmania, etc., which are known to cause malaria, sleeping sickness, etc. So they are also the example for pathogens. Then we have fungi, some of the fungi, some kind of fungi which are known to cause disease in human beings. Then prokaryotes, the best example are bacteria. Most of the diseases uh, which occur to the human beings, they probably bacteria are the causes, like tuberculosis, leprosy. There are so many innumerable diseases which are caused by different types of bacteria. So they are the simplest type of organisms which will lead to the disease condition in the human body. And then coming to the acellular or non-living things, the most deadly type of pathogen are viruses. Virus are the simplest type of organisms. They are made up of genetic material, either DNA or RNA, and the genetic material is covered by a protein coat. Now, this is the simplest structure they have. Even they don't have cell like structure. So only two things, but still they are the deadliest. Now there are so many viruses like virus which cause chickenpox, the virus which cause chikungunya, dengue, HIV virus which leads to AIDS, Ebola virus, Nipah virus, and the virus which is causing a lot of trouble in the world, that is coronavirus. Even though they are the simplest, but they can be deadly because once they enter into the body, they are going to target the tissues of our body because they have nothing on their own. So they will use all the materials of our body cells for their multiplication, and in this process they are going to destroy the tissues which they infect. And lastly, there are some simplest type of molecules which are known as prions, and there are some prions which are known to cause some diseases. So the same definition, immunity is the ability of an organism to resist the infection. Infection means entry of pathogen into the body, and the response shown by the body's immune system to the entry of pathogen is called immune response. Now, uh, this is a overall idea to understand how the immune system works and what are the different types of immune responses. So immunity, we already know what is that. And actually, we have uh, two kinds of immunity. One is innate immunity, which is also called non-specific immunity, and then we have acquired immunity or specific type of immunity. Now, what is the difference between innate and acquired? Now, innate immunity is the one which we have from the time of birth. So it is already there, and it is non-specific means this type of protection is not aimed against any specific pathogen. Whereas acquired immunity is the one which is developed in the body during the lifetime. And this acquired is different from person to person because the acquired immunity uh, develops due to the infection. So whatever the infection, so against that the person develops acquired immunity. And in acquired immunity we have active and passive. Now active means here our own body producing the antibodies or the cells against the infection. And in passive, the body is not producing anything. Actually, the body receives the antibodies and other things from the outer source. So that is the difference between active immunity and passive immunity. Again, in active immunity, we have natural and artificial. For example, the infection, the natural infection, for example, whenever the bacteria enters into our body, virus enters into our body is going to produce the antibodies. So that is natural, active, acquired immunity. Whereas the immunity which is developed due to the vaccines. So, vaccines are given to develop immunity against the future infections. Actually, vaccines are not the real infection. So, therefore, it is called artificial. So, the immunity which is developed due to the vaccines is an example of artificial active acquired immunity. So in the same way, natural passive, as I told you, in passive immunity, we get the antibodies and other things from outside source. So natural, the example is the immunity which we get from the mother. So is an example of natural passive acquired immunity, and artificial when we get the antibodies directly from a recuperating patient, the patient who is recovering from a recent infection. So his blood will have large number of antibodies against that specific pathogen. So those antibodies are given directly to the newly infected person. So that is an example of artificial passive acquired immunity. The same is explained here. Now active immunity through the natural infection by the infection of bacteria, virus, protozoa, etc. So due to this infection, the body develops immunity by producing antibodies or specific cells, etc. That is called natural active acquired immunity. Whereas the immunity which is developed by vaccination is called artificial active and acquired immunity. And as I already mentioned, under this passive immunity, the person actually the antibodies specific, I mean the antibodies are transferred from the mother to the embryo just before the birth. So that is how the individuals get the immunity in a natural passive way, and even after the birth the mother is going to transfer the antibodies through her breast milk, which is called colostrum, which is very rich in antibodies. That is going to protect the baby against infection, because in the baby the immune system is not still well developed and it is not still active. So therefore, mother is going to protect the baby by giving the antibodies through the milk. So this is an example of natural passive acquired immunity. And as I told you, in the artificial passive immunity, the person who is infected, who suffered from the disease, and his body responded actively by producing antibodies against the pathogen. Now in his blood, we find large number of specific antibodies against that particular disease. And what the doctors are going to do is they are going to collect the plasma of the recuperating patient, the person who is recovering from the disease or who recovered from the disease recently. His blood will be having large number of specific antibodies. You separate them, you collect them from the person, and you just introduce these ready antibodies into the newly infected person. So that is called artificial passive immunity. Maybe you heard about something called plasma therapy nowadays, which is being used in some part of India to treat the deadly coronavirus. So it is nothing but this artificial passive acquired immunity technique. So innate immunity is the one which comes by birth and it is non-specific. So here we are going to study some examples. I mean, what are the mechanisms which protect us generally from the infection? So as I can give the example of skin, mucus secretions, washing actions of tears and saliva, sweat gland secretions, and the hydrochloric acid secreted by the stomach glands, lysozyme enzyme which is present in most of the body fluids. So they give us the general protection. Let us see them in detail. So these are different types of uh, barriers which are helping us to protect ourselves from the infection. Now, let us see the physical and mechanical immunity here. Skin. So this is the most important type of physical barrier which is protecting us from the infection. You know that the whole body is covered with skin. Now, skin is a very wonderful organ because it will not allow any pathogen to enter into the body. You just imagine Uh, Nowadays, uh, that corona pandemic is there, and everybody is advising to cover the mouth, nose, and ear. But you are not worried about the other part of the body. Even though the virus settles on the skin, it will not enter into the body. So it will enter only through the mouth, nose, etc. So that is what you have to understand. The skin is the most important barrier which will prevent the entry of pathogens. Now, if there is some injury or cut in the skin, through that the pathogens may enter. That's why maintaining a healthy skin or maintaining the skin without injuries is very important to remain protected against any kind of infections. So next one is mucous membrane. You know, mucous membrane is part of alimentary canal, reproductive tract, etc. So there, the mucus is going to trap most of the pathogens or some organisms which enter into the body. So that's how it protects. Then cilia. So nasal tract, alimentary canal tract, and many other part of the body, they have cilia, and cilia by their action, they try to remove the pathogen which has entered into that particular area. Then coughing and sneezing. Coughing and sneezing is an action whenever unwanted material or unwanted pathogen has entered into the body is trying to remove the cause out of the body by these physical actions like coughing and sneezing. Then peristalsis, peristalsis is a movement of alimentary canal where I can say the vomiting. So whenever some unwanted substance enter through the food, the body is going to remove it out of the body by means of peristalsis. And washing action of tear and saliva. So if something falls in our eyes, so the eye is going to produce large quantities of tears so that it wants to wash off that unwanted material. So these are actually the protective mechanisms which are there in general way. Then biochemical, like secretion of skin, skin produces sweat. The skin is actually covered by sweat, and a lot of salt is there. So that alkaline condition, I mean the acidic condition, sorry, the acidic condition and high concentration is going to give the protection because the pathogens cannot survive in that condition. So the secretion of skin are also involved in the protection. Actually, skin as a physical barrier is one thing, and the secretions which are present on the skin, they also provide the additional protection to the against the infection. Then the digestive tract secretion, especially the mucus and strong acids like hydrochloric acid, etc., and the digestive juices. I mean, the digestive enzymes are also, in some way, they protect against the infection. The human milk, the breast milk also contains the lysozyme and other things which provides protection to the baby. The nasal secretions, whenever we get infected whenever there is irritation, so the nose starts running. So it is actually a method of removing the pathogens or unwanted substances from the nasal tracts. Now, lysozyme is one of the most important enzyme which is found in saliva, which is found in tears, which uh, is a general enzyme which will kill the bacteria. So that is one important biochemical product which protects our body. And bacterial flora, the bacteria which are found inside our body, I mean the bacteria which are helpful. Of course, in our gut we have bacteria which help us in digestion, etc. And they also provide protection because the existing bacteria will prevent the development of the foreign bacteria inside our body. So that is how the bacterial flora inside the body, they also provide protection. Then we have some cells like phagocytic cells and natural killer cells. Now, phagocytic cells are general, WBC or white blood cells, which will destroy pathogen non-specifically. So any type of pathogen which enters into our body, so first they are going to be destroyed by these phagocytic cells. Now, natural killer cells are very important because these are the cells which are going to search for the dead cells in our body or the abnormal cells in our body, and they are going to destroy those type of cells. Actually, natural killer cells play a very important role in preventing the development of tumors inside our body. And lastly, there is something called uh, genetic factors. So, the rule of Darwin, uh, variation, all individuals are not same. In the same way, all populations are not same. So we differ from each other. So each individual is different. I mean, every species has an immunity. For example, one disease which infects and causes disease in human, it may not infect some other species like cat or dog, etc. So this is called species immunity. And inside species immunity, we have racial immunity. In humans, there are so many different races. For example, African race, Mongoloid race, Europeans. So for one disease, Asians may have the immunity, whereas the Europeans may not have that immunity. For example, Africans, they have immunity against malaria, whereas Asians, we don't have immunity against malaria. So this also plays a very important role uh, during pandemic. Now, individual immunity, so like the genetic diversity, every individual is different. So one individual may be having resistance for one disease and the other individual may be uh, receptive for that disease. So he may not be having the immunity. So this is called individual immunity. Now, in recent times, we are hearing a word called herd immunity. So I ask the students to go and search for more information regarding this herd immunity. What is herd immunity and how it develops in a population during the pandemic or endemic situations. Now, lastly, some general things. Of course, temperature. Here we are talking about the body temperature. Whenever there is an infection, a body temperature is going to rise. Now, what is happening? The body is trying to fight the infection and it is trying to produce more energy, and the biochemical reactions are going to be fast. So for that, higher temperature is required. So that is why the body temperature is raised whenever there is an infection. And entry of pathogens may cause inflammation, localized inflammation, so redness, pain, swelling, hot. So these are the four conditions of inflammation. So wherever the pathogen has entered, normally we find inflammation whenever an insect bite occurs. So there will be swelling, there will be accumulation of fluid, redness, heat, and pain. So this inflammation is also an immune response actually. So fever is a condition which is associated with high body temperature. So fever is actually an immune response. It is not a symptom. I mean, it may be a symptom, but it is not. It's so as we already discussed, the acquired immunity, the immunity which is obtained during the lifetime of an individual is called acquired immunity, and we already dealt in brief the natural immunity and artificial immunity. Let us see. Active immunity, the immunity induced by the exposure to a foreign antigen is called active immunity, and active immunity is the resistance developed by an individual after contact with foreign antigens, for example, microorganisms, toxins, etc. Now, how the person is going to develop active immunity? There are different possibilities. One is clinical or subclinical infection. Here, I mean the infection. So, entry of bacteria, entry of virus, entry of protozoa into the body. Whenever this happens, the person is going to develop response, immune response. He is going to develop immunity, and that immunity is called active immunity. And the another condition where the person develops immunity is whenever he receives vaccines. There are vaccines like BCG, polio vaccine, etc. Now, the what are vaccines? Of course, here we are not going to discuss in detail, but you already know. Now, vaccines contain the antigenic substances. So when the vaccines are given to the persons, the body thinks that it is really infected by the pathogen and it starts producing antibodies and other things. So it simply shows immune response to the false infection. Even though the infection is false, but the body develops immunity, and this immunity gives protection against the future infections. So that is also an example for active immunity. And sometimes may not be the pathogens, but some toxins. For example, the venoms of insects, snakes, etc. They also result in the active immunity. Whenever a person is bitten by snake in small quantity, he actually develops immunity against that particular type of toxic material. Now, natural active immunity, I already told you, is the one which is developed by the active participation of the immune system of the person, which occurs due to the infections. And in artificial immunity, the person develops immunity due to the artificial injection of vaccines. I mean artificial methods where there is no real infection, but there is a false infection. And to sum up, uh, in the next video, we are going to study the types of immune responses, how the body responds to the infection. In the active immunity, how the body is going to produce antibodies of the cells, etc. And actually, our body responds in two ways. One is called humoral immunity, which is associated with the production of antibodies, and the other method involves the cells, which is called cell mediated immunity. That we'll study in the next video. And we already studied the natural active immunity, artificial active immunity, and what is passive immunity. Okay, thank you. So in the next video, we will continue with the types of immunity or immune responses.